Welcome. We're back again. My name is Paolo Annino. I teach at FSU College of Law. This is our fourth segment, the final segment on the Florida Developmental Disability Waiver. We talked about what the waiver is, how you receive a waiver, how to get off the wait list, and how you receive services. Now through cyberspace we have some questions. So let me get to the questions right now. The first question is, what disability / issues qualify a child for a Medicaid waiver? What we're talking about today is the Developmental Disability Waiver, and in Chapter 393, Florida Statutes. Florida Statutes, another one. Here goes, the third probably is going to work. Florida Statutes 393, it lists the 6 developmental disabilities. So in order to receive a Medicaid waiver, the child or the consumer has to fit under one of these 6 developmental disabilities. What they are is, one is an intellectual disability, which used to be called mental retardation. Number 2 is autism. And by the way, we just may kind of do a little tangent for a moment. There is an epidemic going on in this country on autism. I remember when a few years ago there was 1 out of 150 kids were being diagnosed with autism. Now we're down to 1 out of 68. So we've gone from over 150 to now to 168. And so in every couple years, the number is, we're getting a higher and higher percentage of children. And again, we have no idea why this is happening, but we do know there is an incredible increase every year of children being diagnosed with autism. Autism, summarized, it involves 2 major impairments: a language impairment, initial development of language, usually pragmatic language rather than language of how to respond, but a variety of language developments and severe social behavior deficits. So the third of the 6 is Down syndrome. That is an extra chromosome genetic disorder. The 4th is spina bifida. Spina bifida is a birth defect where the child's spinal cord is incomplete or split. Prader-Willi. Again, Prader-Willi is a genetic disorder where the child has a variety of symptoms, one being that they constantly eat and become so obese they can die. Okay? So Prader-Willi, a variety of symptoms there, genetic disorder. And you see, and the last one is cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy is a neurological disorder that impairs movement. A neurological disorder that impairs movement of a variety of different types, and there is no one type of cerebral palsy consumer. There are a variety of different types of impairments of movement. So these are our 6 disabilities under Florida's Chapter 393 that are considered developmental disabilities. So in order to get the DD waiver, as we talked in this video, in all 4 segments, you have to fit under what I call one of these 6 pigeonholes. Okay? So I think that answers the first question. But I do want to qualify one thing. We talked about the DD waiver, but earlier what I said was the DD waiver is part of the home and community-based services waiver. waiver. So, home and community-based services waiver. So, there are other home and community-based services waiver in Florida. There's over a dozen other ones in Florida. One of the other ones is the brain injury spinal cord waiver. But today what we're focusing on is really the waiver that's most involved in the work we do, and that is the developmental disability waiver. And then right now in Florida, just to get a better understanding of this waiver, there's roughly 30,000 what I call consumers who are on the DD waiver. Compared to, we're the third largest state in the union, California, Texas, and Florida. We have 19.8 million people in this state. And so what we're really talking about right now is a population of approximately 30,000 who are actually on the waiver, and then 20,000 who are on the wait list for the waiver. So the answer to your question again is, these are the 6 disabilities that what I call pigeonhole in order to get a Medicaid waiver. Next question. What is IBudget and who qualifies? Okay. As I said earlier, IBudget has nothing to do with iPhones or iPads. IBudget is the brand new, right out of the gate system of creating a budget for people who have the DD waiver, so that the person will have a lump sum money for an entire year to use for providers to provide habilitation services. And what the theory behind the IBudget is it will create flexibility, it will create choice, so that the consumer, once he or she creates her budget, will be able to move the budget around during the year without asking permission or authorization from the Agency for Persons with Disabilities. So the theory is to create flexibility. So IBudget is the brand new way of distributing funds for people on the DD waiver. And when I say brand new, it is brand new. The handbook dealing with this is still pending. The rules were found invalid by the First District Court of Appeals dealing with IBudget, and there's proposed rules right now as we're talking, going through workshops. So the final rules have not even been completed yet. But IBudget is the way a consumer will know how much funding they're going to have in order to obtain the medically necessary services. And as I talked earlier today, the way we get the IBudget is through this QSI questionnaire, which will give an algorithm amount, and that's the baseline, and then from the algorithm amount you add significant additional needs. And there might be some significant additional needs. You add those two, and then you get your IBudget. So the answer to the question is that's what the IBudget is, and who qualifies. The IBudget is only for folks with the DD waiver. It's a DD waiver program. And that's one of the reasons why it's called a waiver, because you're waiving the uniformity requirements in Medicaid. So in Medicaid, or traditional regular Medicaid, there's uniformity requirements. So something you do in Miami, you have to do in Tallahassee. The same rules apply everywhere to all folks in Medicaid. Not here. This is a waiver program, so this IBudget only applies to, at least at this point in time, only applies to folks who are getting the DD waiver who are developmental delay. Okay, now, next question. Is there a way to gauge where a child is on the waiting list for Medicaid waiver? Excellent question. I don't know the answer to that question, though. My sense of it is no. That's my sense of it. And let me try to explain why I think, or it would be very hard to gauge where you are on the waiver. And there's a simple answer that can be provided, but I don't think it's correct. Well, you just look at the date you applied. You just look at the date that you applied. Well, the problem with that is it's not strictly done by chronology of the date by calendar, of the date you applied. There is priorities in getting off the waiver. And we talked about earlier today, we talked about there's 7 categories of priorities. And the first priority is crisis. And the second priority of getting off the wait list, I should say, is being a DCF child. So, but say you're a DCF child and the only funding there's left is for crisis applicants. So you might just be sitting there for years and years because only new money will go for those folks who are in crisis. So it's hard to figure out because people could jump ahead which folks are going to, where anyone stays on the list. The statistics I've seen was at least 5 years people stay on the 20,000 person wait list. But again, that's really fuzzy, and I'm not sure how accurate either. Okay, so let's see, whether is there a way to gauge? So the general answer is no. There really isn't, in my opinion, how long to be on the wait list. The next question was asked by a guardian at Litem, former guardian at Litem, and this question is an excellent question. All were excellent questions. How does the Regis Little Act to protect children with special needs, 39.6251, relate to the DD waiver? So how does this brand new, this past session, how does the Regis Little Act to protect children with special needs, 39.6251, apply to the DD waiver? Well, first let me just give a quick summary. Again, need to thank Alan Bromwitz and thank Children's First for this new act that will help children. What is it? It's an act that provides guardians for children who are aging out, who have severe disabilities, severe developmental disabilities, and who are aging out of the foster care system. And so when a child is 17 years old and up for the first judicial review, and if the judge believes and advocates believe that this child needs a guardian, within that first judicial review at the age of 17, the court is to order DCF to do evaluations if ones don't already exist. And if the child does need a guardian, and there's 2 types, there's guardian advocates and plenary guardians and limited guardianships. And if the child does need a guardianship, then within that 17th birthday year, DCF has the responsibility to identify potential guardians for this child. So that this child can make life choices that are productive. And so this will occur, this guardianship that will happen during child's 17th birthday will occur in what's called probate court or guardianship court. So the importance of the Regis Little Act is, in the past, what's happened is a number of children with profound disabilities, they age out, they're 18 years old, they leave the system, and there's no one to help them. They need a guardian to flourish in the community. So to answer the question, how is this related to this idea that DCF is to identify a guardian and that the guardianship process is to begin at the 17th birthday? One of my questions on this new statute is, okay, DCF is to identify, but where are they going to identify them? Where are they going to find these individuals who would be willing to be either a guardian advocate or a plenary guardian for these children? That's going to be very difficult. We do have something called public guardians in the state of Florida. That's a program. The problem with the public guardians, at least to my knowledge, there's always a very long wait list again for a public guardian. So I don't know how DCF is going to meet its mission in identifying, but that's what they're required to do. And the act is really clear that they could be held in contempt of court if they do not, in good faith, identify potential guardians for children who are profoundly disabled, who can't make these life choices. How does that relate to the DD waiver? Well, once you have a guardian, the guardian can participate in creating the guardian can participate in applying for a DD waiver if the child doesn't already have it, and the guardian can actually work with the support coordinator in creating the IBudget and getting the services this child needs to flourish. And I've had example of a child I represented who was profoundly disabled and did not want to be in the system any longer and really needed a guardian. And there just wasn't anyone out there willing to participate in that and step up to the plate. And what happened to this child, unlike Regis Little, who died, what happened to the child I represented, he's now in prison. He got involved in a criminal activity and he's now in prison. So, again, this is a way of dealing with children who are profoundly disabled, who need guardianships to make choices, and guardians then will help that child either get on a DD waiver or help the child create their IBudget plan. So thank you for listening to this 4-part video on the DD waiver. We're going to include an outline and with all citations for you, and we're also going to include a number of exhibits and applications that we talked about during these several hours. Thank you again.